Happy New Year! It is 2025. I hope you are feeling great, and I hope that you feel laser focused. So, I'm just going to jump right into the article that I am about to post on my LinkedIn, okay? And this article is about the African Sahel. What the Sahel is a strip, okay, a geography of landlocked African countries that aren't quite West Africa, but they're not quite East Africa, right? It's like a big strip. Check out my article, and then you'll see the countries associated with the Sahel. But if you wanted to know my opinion, why I'm so passionate about the Sahel and the movement that they're doing, or why so many other people are passionate about it, is because this is changing the way that leadership is seen in Africa. Okay, so for maybe someone like me that is not usually passionate about politics, especially passionate about politics in a continent other than my own, Africa, right? I'm African American, but I'm American, right? I wasn't too concerned about African matters until now. But I think this is so important. This is why I think it's important to highlight these countries. So let's go ahead and read this article. And follow me on LinkedIn if you wish, if you can find me. Let's see. All right. Sahel Rising. In a world where power and influence have often been exchanged for a quick buck, a new wave of change is brewing in the Sahel. I personally feel like a bozo speaking my opinion on African countries, which I do a little bit, and their government. As an African American myself, I want to think I have great intentions for our African brothers and sisters. I want to see them win after years of observing, and it seems like Black people sometimes get the bad stick of things, right? I mean, I hate to be negative, but I also am not going to turn a blind eye to a part that maybe a quiet part that can still be uncomfortable to others, surprisingly. What else? Countries like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Chad are really stepping up and challenging the old ways of doing things. For too long, many governments seem to prioritize deals with the West over the needs of their own people. I think of Nigeria, for example, one of the first countries that come to my mind personally. For too long, many governments seem to prioritize what the West wants. But now, it feels like there's a refreshing change in the air. The Sahel is finding its own voice and embracing true sovereignty. These nations are showing Africa and the world that strong leadership doesn't mean having to rely on foreign handouts. So this, I feel, is where the West is not happy about this, right? The West is happy about feeding Africans what they need, but when they become self-reliant, then it's an issue. I find that interesting. Honestly, this is the first time I have felt proud of African countries, and it's kind of sharp to say these things, but it's the truth. Watching a strong leader like Ibrahim Traore stand firm and reject the idea of being a puppet for Western leaders has been so inspiring. It's a perspective I feel passionately about personally, and I think it's important to share. I feel enraged when I see African leaders. When I see weak African leaders, I feel enraged. Like, I see enraged when I see African leaders. No, just the weak ones. This is a new attitude in the Sahel that has made me look at plane tickets personally to Niger as well as accommodations. But it's really hard to find places that have a nice pool and other things that aren't like $500 a night. So, and not that that's bad, but I feel like if I go to Africa, I don't want to pay not yet. If I go to an African country, I don't know if I want to pay $500 a night to go to Niger. to Miami, but we'll get there when the time comes. The Sahel traditionally is a strip of land that faces brutal realities like drought, conflict, and poverty, has been the receiving end of foreign interventions for years, right? Western powers, often with their own agendas, have made promises of aid, stability, and economic support. But for the people of Mali, Niger, and other countries in the regions, these promises have often been like empty pockets. Nice to look at, but not much substance inside. Okay? It's hard to take seriously the pride of these leaders have. Ibrahim Traore has been the first since Gaddafi to strike admiration to African countries. This is just my personal opinion. But then something remarkable happened. Instead of being pushed around by the whims of the West, these nations started saying, enough is enough, and began charting a course that puts their people and resources first. It's like they looked at the world and said, we've been waiting at the table for too long, and it's time we start setting our own, which I love, right? Like, African countries being more reliable but responsible. Like, you love to see it, because sometimes when we think about African leaders, we don't think inspiring. At least I didn't until this year, personally. Maybe it's a shame on me, or maybe this is how powerful this movement is. There's a lot of people talking about the leaders in the Sahel, which is really cool. Let's see. Enough is enough. Da, 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 da. It's like they looked at the world saying, we've been waiting at the table for too long, the Sahel. And it's time we start setting our own table. Take Mali and Niger, for instance. In recent years, both nations have undergone political shifts that have drawn them away from France and its former colonial grip. They've turned towards independence, choosing to rely on themselves and their neighbors. And even Russia has been a support that has helped them become more independent, versus France, that seems like France wants them to not be self-reliant. This is a bold, radical move but it's one that speaks to the urgency of regaining control over their own future. I love it. In a world where foreign influence too often masquerades as help, Mali and Niger have chosen to stand up and reclaim what's theirs, even if it means a little discomfort in the short term. Let's talk about Burkina Faso, shall we? A country that's not afraid to shake things up, and I love them. The people of Burkina Faso took to the streets, and their voices were loud and clear. They wanted to change. The coup that toppled the old regime wasn't just about power grabs. It was a rejection of foreign control and affirmation to their right to decide their own fate. The Sahel, in many ways, has become a heart of a larger movement that refuses to be a pawn in the global game of geopolitical chess, excuse me. But before you think it's some type of fairy tale, this change isn't happening without struggles. Western powers, particularly France, haven't exactly been sending bouquets of flowers to celebrate these new alliances. In fact, dusty old Emmanuel Macron keeps sending hits against Ibrahim Traore. But this guy is a machine. Ibrahim Traore, is the heart of the movement, in my opinion. He's such a beautiful face. I love him. I know I said it a bunch, but seriously, the way that he leads is so inspiring. It's inspiring enough to get people that have no idea about African politics to pay attention. And I personally think that that's powerful, personally speaking. Instead, they've been quick to condemn the shift as a step backwards, a move away from democracy as they define it. But here's the thing. These countries aren't saying no to democracy. They're saying no to a brand of democracy that serves outside interests instead of their own. I would say no too. They're not rejecting Western values. They're rejecting the exploitation that often comes with Western values. Okay? Again, African countries aren't rejecting Western values. They're rejecting the exploitation that comes with it. Let's see. Now, I know this sounds like a lot of serious political talk, but let's take a moment to laugh at how often we've seen African nations being told how to run their affairs by the same countries that are only interested in taking a piece of their pie. It's almost like inviting someone into your home and then watching them walk off with your silverware. It's not cute, right? But the Sahel is not being polite about it, or they're done being polite about it. And you know what? We're all here for it. If it were me, if someone kept walking and stealing away from my table many times and then insulting me like a child, they would eventually walk back with a bloody stump. So I love that. And I'm very pregnant, by the way. If you couldn't tell, so I'm very pregnant, and personally my favorite thing to do is needlessly look into reasons to be mad at France or other leaders that are totally taking advantage of these countries, right? I never cared before. Again, it could be the pregnancy hormones, but it might stay. These feelings might stay. Okay. Let's power through this. These countries in the Sahel are proving that leadership doesn't have to mean selling out to the highest bidder. It's not about creating a new set of masters. It's about creating a space where African leaders lead with integrity. Finally. And with their people's best interests in their heart. It's about creating a future where Africa, and not the West, gets to decide what its future looks like. Okay, so I understand. Again, I'm not a politician. I'm not even an expert in politics. But in my mind, I can understand African countries and their leadership aren't going to jump from here to here, right? It's a progression. I personally think that countries in the Sahel are great examples. And, Africa is not a country, it's a continent. So not all countries are going to be able to keep up with them. Not all countries are even going to do what the Sahel and other countries in Africa that follow do, right? I mean, it seems like the smart countries would follow what they're doing in the Sahel. But the thing is, it seems like if you look into the true history enough, it seems like a pressure has been put on these African countries to not be able to grow, right? So they wouldn't understand what's going on. So I think it's really cool. Again, that I just think it's really cool what's going on in Africa right now in the Sahel Strait. So ending. So to the leaders of Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and the rest of the Sahel, you have our attention, you have my attention, and you have many's attention across the world, thankfully. Keep showing the world that you're not just following the old script. You're writing your own script. And we are cheering for you. Many of us are. On every step of the way, it's time to take back the pen. Who knew the Sahel could become the place of a revolution that we can all believe in? That's crazy. Crazy, right? Like the poorest country in Africa, Burkina Faso, is the country that's leading this beautiful movement in Africa, and they just paid off their own debt, which is amazing. But I don't know, let's see, maybe I'll post an article about that next time. Thank you so much for hanging out. Again, my name is Aika. I don't know if you can find me on LinkedIn yet. My account's a little wonky over there, but let me know. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about the Sahel. What comes to your mind? Have you ever been interested in African politics? What's your opinion on African countries? What do you think about Ibrahim Traore? Take a lovely weekend and Take care of yourself, take care of your health, take care of your wealth, take care of your mental, spiritual, and physical health. Blessed be you.